we're going to take a look at the info form or the parts information form. So putting a checkbox in the info is going to give us a list of all of the parts that are on the current selected sheet. So we are currently viewing sheet number 1. All of the parts listed here in the parts list are on sheet number 1. Selecting to view a different sheet, we will see that all of the parts for sheet number 2 are now visible. Selecting any one part in this list will automatically select all of the shapes that are associated with that particular cabinet or that particular part. So as you select, you can see that each item in each part becomes selected. We then have farther down the information about the part itself. We could see that the part name, the size, thickness, what unit number, the sheet number that this belongs to, and the XY start position. The XY start position is the lower left. We could select any one part in the drawing, and you will see that that part automatically gets selected in our parts list. So selecting the part, selecting for that wall shelf, I could choose to select to up that sheet to number 2, clicking Save. We'll then move that part from sheet number 1 and move it over to sheet number 2. We are also able to save a custom part to our parts library. So I'm going to select on this part and I am going to move it off to the side. I'm going to make some modifications to this. We don't need the holes here, and it might be that this particular part or custom part that we might need to redo often requires a hole in the bottom with a rectangle. With that part off to the side, I'm going to rename that part. I'm going to call it just Test New and click Save. So that renamed the part in our parts list. If I right click, I could choose to save that part. That part is now added, or that part name is now added to the parts library, and we see that it is listed right here with the Test New. So we could then delete that part. We are also able to undo. Selecting that part, we could also right click in the parts list and select delete. That part is now a permanent item inside of the parts library. So anytime for any job, we could select the part listed in the library and it will add it to our sheet. You could then just click the nested sheets to re-nest and it will incorporate it back into the nesting view. Over top of the right, we've chosen and seen how to save parts and how to delete parts. The explode part comes into play when you may have drawn in your items from an existing CAD program. So we're going to import a DXF. And I'm going to bring in a job that has been nested separately from PartNester. This DXF has been brought in as one part. So when we select the item in the parts list, we see all of the items become selected. I'm going to go ahead and move that part off to the side. And I say that part, even though it is a grouping, as far as PartNester understands it, it is one single part. But we can clearly see that there are multiple parts, and that is what the explode button is going to do. Once I select that part, right click, select explode, it will then go through the parts and explode it out into separate individual parts. You could always come back and re-nest now that they are individual parts and they act as individual parts. So that is the information about the parts themselves and how to Select parts, delete parts, and use the Parts Info tab. We're going to cover the Shape Info form. The Shape Info form allows us to get the individual shape information about any item or any shape within the job. So currently I only have one shape drawn, and that is this rectangle. So when I select it, it becomes pink with the arrows. The arrows are showing the direction that the shape is traveling in. We also have our node points with numbers. So we are 1, 2, 3, and 4. We'll just make note of that and remember that. So when it is unselected, it is showing that it is a green shape. That green is indicating that we have no cutting depth or no depth associated with it. And we also do not have any layers associated in the job or any cutting operations. So to add a layer, I'm going to select the shape and give it a name. I'm going to call it cut. I could also specify the size and give it a depth. Once that is done, we could go ahead and hit change. That now rescales and re-changes the size of that shape. We have the absolute and relative. This is the position of where this shape is located. So we could move it. We could move it a relative distance from where it currently is. So if I want to move it 12 inches to the right, we could enter in 12 and then click change. It is going to move 12 inches to the right. And if I leave that 12 there and hit change again, it is going to continue to move 12 inches in the positive direction. If I want to move it back to the left, we would enter in a minus 12. The relative or the absolute position, that is the position that the lower left, or this anchor point is set at the lower left, is from the lower left of the job. So currently, the position of X and Y is currently roughly 7. So we were going to change that, make that 12. So we're going to move 12 inches away from 0. And we will also move the Y up to 30 inches, which is going to be somewhere around here. Once we hit change, that part then gets moved to the location specified by the lower left in the absolute position. So currently we could measure roughly from here. We could see that we are that 12 inches in the X, 30 inches in the Y. The grid that we have down below, this is the individual locations of each node point. So each number is associated with a value. So node number 2 is listed right here. So currently it is at the position of 42 and the position Y in the 30. So if I want to make just this line segment 2 inches longer, we're going to change that 42 to a 44. Then when we hit enter, we could see that that moves out. Same thing on number 3. We will change also to 44 and then enter. That makes that a parallel and horizontal line again, a rectangle. The items down below allow us to change the segment type. So we have segment 1, segment 2, 3, then 4. So if I want to have a radius here, we would change that segment number 2 to specify a radius, and I am just going to put in a radius of 12, and when we hit enter, we could see that that then becomes an arc. We'll undo that arc by just a Control Z, and we're going to look at other options that we have for placing different types of shapes or aligning them within one another. As we learned in our other video for the parts, we have one part, which is our rectangle. I'm going to draw in another rectangle inside of that part. And we see we did not get a new part added because that rectangle is grouped to this part. Selecting this one rectangle might be used, say, for a dado. So if I want that dado to be the same distance as the width and the length of this cabinet, I could choose to go for a distance, selecting endpoint to endpoint. That's giving me a total of 32 inches. And I want to change that X to the distance that I just measured. So we could right click and change that distance to 32. And in the Y direction, I want that dado to be 3/4, and we will go to a total depth of 3/8. But I could always go 3/8, and when I come off of that, it's going to do the math for us. I'm going to change that layer, and we're going to say to the inside. It could be any name that you choose. Selecting change now modifies that shape. I now want to position this rectangle right along this edge and then 3/4 of an inch in on the top. And to do that, we are going to use the absolute distance with a reference point. So I'm going to click this letter P and come over, and I'm going to click the endpoint on the lower left of our part. That now specifies the location of that lower left. So now when we're working in absolute, it is going to take these numbers into account. So for the X, I want it to be 0. And in the Y, I mentioned that I wanted it to be 0.75. And now hitting change is going to position that rectangle exactly at 0 and 3/4 in from the front edge. We also have centering tools. So if I have another rectangle and I want to have that centered across the top, we'll hold the Shift key down to select the other object and going to hit the center function, and we see that that just shifted centered. The location in the pivot point or the reference point has not changed. It's still this lower left. So I could still specify by clicking on this item here without changing the Y value. We could come in and say that I want to have that to be 0.75 in from the left, and hitting change just moves that rectangle over to the left. Every part, every cabinet part has to have a perimeter cut associated with it. That perimeter shape is what is used for the sizing of the nest. And it needs to have that perimeter shape by selecting any one shape. One of those shapes of that part is going to have this is perimeter checked. So selecting on one of our other rectangles, it is not checked. And we see clicking on that last one, it is checked. So that is the basics of the shape info form.